Hello, welcome to another Looney Tunes review video. If you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe to follow my journey to review all 1000 classic Looney Tunes shorts, and give this video a like as well. So this is a review for Caveman Inky, and with me today is my fellow caveman, my good friend, Manny Cruz, the Toonie Tenor. Say hi.
Hi, everyone.
So this is Caveman Inky, released on the 25th of November 1950 with a blue ribbon reissue sometime in 1958. It's the 605th in the series, and it's directed by Chuck Jones. There's no official release, aside from maybe a VHS compilation or thereabouts. This scan comes from a person who wishes to remain anonymous, but yeah, due to the subject matter, it will unlikely be on an official release. But if you haven't seen this one, unlike myself and Manny, who might have seen this on TV back in the 90s, well, a lot of you are probably fresh out of luck. So, what happens here is that Inky is out hunting, where we see the Earth move, and out comes the Minor Bird, who proceeds to mystify all those who follow it, which includes, of course, Inky and a saber-toothed cub. As for trivia, so firstly, this is the last Inky short, and possibly forever, given the changing sensitivities and whatnot, but yeah, it's the last one. But the next bit of trivia that Manny will go into further is the fact that this is the first short to have Milt Franklin credited. Milt Franklin had been around a fair while, hadn't he, Manny?
Well, yes. Well, in this cartoon, actually, Stalling and Franklin are credited, but I thought it was interesting that Milt Franklin finally got the credit that he deserved. So, as we all know, Carl Stalling became the music director at Leon Schlesinger Productions in 1936. And around the same time, I don't have the specific dates on me, Milt Franklin was brought on board as his arranger. And this is going off the top of my head. I know that prior to that, Norman Spencer, when he was the music director, his son would do the arrangements or the orchestrations for Norman Spencer. Carl Stalling was the arranger. So what does an arranger do in music? An arranger takes pieces of music and they rearrange it, they arrange it. They change things like they change the style of the music, they change the tempo, they change different aspects of the music to make it fit whatever they're doing. For example, let's say I take Jingle Bells, the classic melody of Jingle Bells, and I rewrite it for a jazz band, or I rewrite it for a salsa band, or I write it for an a cappella choir. That's what arranging is. You're just taking a piece of music and mixing it up into a different form. So Carl Stalling would write his arrangements. He would usually write the score for a cartoon in about a week. And remember, his scores were a mix of original music that he composed and the music that he was famous for quoting, whether it was opera, classical music, or the music that Warner Brothers owned. And then Milt Franklin would take the music and orchestrate it. An orchestrator's job in particular is to take that music and start pretty much tasking instruments to play it. Carl Stalling scores. He's writing the general idea down of what's going to happen in the cartoon, and he usually wrote I'm assuming he wrote his arrangements on the piano. Milt Franklin takes that piano arrangement of whatever the music's going to be, and he says, okay, in this part of the cartoon, I want the flutes to play here. In this part, I'll have the strings. I'll have trombone do this particular sound effect. He's pretty much taking what Carl Stalling already did and just dictating what instruments will do that job. I think what's interesting, too, is that since Stalling and Franklin were working so closely for so many years since 1936, that when Franklin eventually took over the duties of music director later on in the 50s, that it was a relatively seamless transition. I mean, there's times I'll listen to a Milt Franklin score and I think I'm listening to a Carl Stalling thing because their styles are similar. It's not like when Milt Franklin passed away in 1962 and William Lava came and his style of arranging and composing was much different than Stalling or Franklin's. And something to bring up as well, where I'm thinking of another cartoon that has the orchestrations credit that this one has, is The Wearing of the Grin, another Chuck Jones cartoon from 1950. But that cartoon, the arrangement was done by Eugene Podany. Podany? I always forget how to say his name.
Yeah, neither. I have no idea either.
Podany, that guy. Because around 1950, that's when Carl Stalling got into an accident and he was unable to work for a while. But the same thing happens where instead of Carl Stalling, Eugene was writing the arrangement. He wrote the score of the cartoon. He passed it along to Milt Franklin. And then Milt Franklin, again, said, okay, trumpets, you do this, violins, you do this. And I actually didn't realize until lately when I was rewatching The Wearing of the Grin a few months ago that it was not composed by Carl Stalling. The score wasn't written by him because the way that Milt Franklin arranged the instruments, it sounded similar to what he always did with Carl Stalling. But if you really get into the nitty gritty, if you really pay attention, then you'll notice the difference in the way that Carl Stalling and Eugene Podeny compose. But they had the same orchestrator, so he was still working in the same way that he would with Carl Stalling. I don't know if any of that made any sense for non-musicians, but for me, it worked.
No, it makes total sense. But some of you might be screaming, but what about the cartoon?
No
Don't
more
worry.
music. Talk about the cartoon.
Well, okay, because the music's clearly not important in these cartoons, but
Not at all.
no, clearly not. But as for the cartoon itself, we've already spoken on the previous Inky reviews about how there are issues with the way Inky looks, although as far as stereotypes go, it's one of the more tamer ones, so we won't get into that in this review. We'll just focus on the actual short itself, starting with the opening, which, well, it's no Fantasia, the segment involving all the dinosaurs, but it's really nice.
Well, the opening itself, I mean, sorry, I'll have to talk again about the music for a second, but I really like the intro.
Boo.
Boo, hiss. The reason why is because the beginning of this cartoon where the title sequence starts and bits and pieces of the score are ingrained in my head because of the Carl Stalling Project. So if you have the first volume of the Carl Stalling Project and if you put on the track the medley dinner music for a pack of hungry cannibals, you hear bits and pieces of Caveman Inky and I think a little bit of Witch's Witch, and there's another one I can't think of off the top of my head. But yeah, I've listened to that track a billion times. Ba-da-da-da-da-da, bum, 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 ba, ba, and it really draws you in. As for the beginning itself, like you said, it's no Fantasia, but I will say that there's something about the way that the Jones unit designed the dinosaurs and the saber-toothed tiger and all these other animals. Like, it really caught my attention the way that they were designed in particular. Not just, like, I mean, of course, you had the cute little dinosaur and this and that, but I mean, like, the more quote unquote realistic looking dinosaurs and the saber-toothed tiger, like, they stood out. I don't know if you agree with me, but
I
it's just,
do.
I thought they were very unique.
I do, because they're either trying to go for some realism, but it's not quite realistic, because they clearly didn't go to the same art schools that Walt made his artists go to. But that's not the goal of this cartoon. The goal of this cartoon is entertaining, and it's like, you know what? It's good enough. But yeah, they do look kind of weird. The weird thing about the way the Sabretooth looks, it looks, especially the cub, it looks like Charlie Dog with a mane. It's kind of weird.
Oh, that was the first thing when I saw I thought it was a lion. Is it a saber-toothed tiger?
I would assume so. Look, putting aside the fact that cavemen did not exist with dinosaurs, did not exist with saber tooths, we're going to put all that aside. It's a
Wait,
cartoon.
they didn't? It's a
No.
cartoon, guys. No, but
I mean, next you'll be telling me the Flintstones got it all wrong,
dinosaurs
Yeah.
didn't bark like Dino? Oh.
No. Yep, 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 yep. Yeah, I know.
I got a kick out of it, just the design of the dog itself and a dog. See, now I'm saying it's a dog, but the feline animal, yeah, it definitely gives me Charlie Dog vibes as well as Frisk. I was thinking more of the frisky puppy as opposed to Charlie Dog.
Sure, yeah, but it's your typical Chuck Jones dog of
Jones
the
dog,
time.
yeah,
Yeah, we call it Jones
exactly.
dog, and it's supposed to be a cat. But as an Aussie, we of course love our kookaburras. We love the kookaburra laugh, but why was that in the soundtrack? Like, since when are kookaburras associated with caveman times?
It's actually a few years ago that I never knew that sound or whatever it was. I had no idea that was what a kookaburra was, or the fact that it's a bird. It's not even like a reptile or whatever, or a monkey or whatever. It was a few years ago that I actually learned the song "Kookaburra sits in the old gum tree." Da, 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 da. And you were surprised that I have awareness of Australian culture outside of Bart versus Australia and Rocco's Modern Life.
Exactly, but no, I just thought it was a little bit surprising. I guess it just has that sound that can lend itself to that kind of environment. But yeah, but as an Aussie, I'm like, oh, okay. Apparently, kookaburras were around back then. Okay, fair enough. I gotta say, probably my favorite part of this short is that rule of three involving that poor caveman. He's trying to make his. I'm assuming it's a stew. We'll just say it's a stew, I guess, or soup, whatever. Why was he in the dinosaur's mouth in the for the second time round? I thought that gave me a bit of a chuckle. I thought that was pretty good. And then of course he has the picnic table at the very end, just because.
I'm always a sucker for a running gag in a cartoon, and I think what I like the most, besides the fact it was a running gag, and yeah, he decided to start cooking inside a dinosaur, but his expression on his face when he was just mindlessly stirring the pot. I just love that goofy glazed eye looked face that he had the entire time. Every time I saw it, I couldn't help but chuckle.
And speaking of expressions, I love the Minor Bird. I still think Inky shorts have their charm about them, but for me, it's the Minor Bird that stands out the most. Just that deadpan expression of it just hopping around to
Fingal's Cave, original name of the piece is actually called the Hebrides. The Hebrides, which I had to look up, are a group of islands in western Scotland, and that's where Fingal's Cave is located. And the composer of that piece, the famous Felix Mendelssohn, visited Scotland in 1829 when he was 20, and he went inside Fingal's Cave, and he was just mesmerized by the acoustics of that particular area, and that's what inspired him to write the Hebrides, aka Fingal's Cave.
the dinosaur's expression when he's all tied up, and that's a great way. All right, fine. It's a cheaper way of doing a big action, because you don't have to animate it, but it works so well here because you think, what on earth did this Minor Bird do to cause the dinosaur to be all tied up? It's incredible.
Going along what you said with the Minor Boyd, sorry, my New York, New Jersey accent is really shining through tonight. With the Minor Bird itself, sorry guys, I'm going to talk about music again. But the music that you hear when the Minor Bird is approaching and all the creatures of the jungle are freaking out is the overture to the opera Rienzi by Richard Wagner. And for years, I was going crazy trying to figure out what the name of that music was. But yeah, I've always loved that music, and this cartoon uses it well. And I just love how it's building up the tension. Oh my God, this huge, horrific monster is coming, and the dinosaurs and the saber-toothed tigers are all freaking out. And then, boom, the Minor Bird comes out, and then you hear Fingal's Cave. And we know these cartoons because, now it's so easy to watch them, and we're familiar with the Minor Bird and his power and everything. But what I would love to do to see how the audience reacted to that gag, these cartoons were not meant to be binged. They didn't know that these cartoons would be studied and appreciated like they are to this day. And yeah, it's just that's like one of the biggest fake out gags I've ever seen in a Warner Brothers short. And I think it would have read incredibly well with the audience, whether or not they've seen that particular Minor Bird character, because there was 4 cartoons with that character before this one. One thing that though was rather interesting considering the censorship of the time period is when you see the cub when he starts noticing Inky and his bone, and you hear the sound of the cubs drinking their milk, from their mama. And I'm surprised that was something that was able to fly back in 1949, 1950. I figured you could show what's going on, but like to actually hear the sound effect of a cub nursing, I'm surprised it got through the censorship board. And yeah, it's just every time you see, like you said before, the dinosaur being tied up. I like how Jones was economical not only with his animation, but just with the storytelling itself. You don't have to show how powerful the Minor Bird is. The shaking and everything reads incredibly well.
In terms of this cartoon, I love the look of it. It's fantastic. And this print that I have here is fantastic. It's not restored, yes, but it's a nice, beautiful scan. And yeah, it looks fantastic. And, I was entertained by the short. I thought it was pretty fun. It's not my favorite short of 1950, not by a long shot. That's coming up very soon. But, this is nice. I mean, I'm giving this 7.5 out of 10. Looks nice. The gags are funny. Yes, inky. Bit unfortunate. But you know what? I enjoyed it. Yeah, 7.5 out of 10. What would you rate this one?
Considering the print I used to see, I mean, this is a cartoon I never saw until I was an adult. I never saw this one on Nickelodeon or anything. I don't think they were showing Inky cartoons in the 90s. I used to have a copy of it that was like recorded off of a VHS, and it looked dreadful. Similar to what you said, funny gags. Some of the artwork looks really neat. Some of the gags read really well. I'd give it a 7 out of 10.
But out of all the Inkies, I have to say this one might be my favorite. I haven't seen the others for a while because I did them ages ago as part of the commentary series. But honestly, this one's probably my favorite. I think this is Jones at his peak, and it does show. While, yes, it's not his best work of 1950, not by a long shot, but the Jones Maltese team, even in these quote-unquote lesser shorts, do pretty well. I think that'll do it for this one. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, take care.
I think that's supposed to be a kookaburra. I tried.